I'm going to be recording our meetings purely for two reasons. Firstly, for archival reasons, so they'll always be available for any members, authorized members, to go back and look at them. And I'm going to keep them private, so I'm going to put them on my YouTube channel, but private. And so I will only give access to our meetings for those who contact me and want me to send them to them, and then I'll email them the meeting for the purposes of their own use. So in no way is it going to be a public document. And so hopefully that serves those two purposes well. And again, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, I'm very familiar with Zoom. I used it, tremendously when I was teaching at the university. So it was a really, really nice tool to have. Now, the way it usually works for Zoom is that the best way to hear everybody who's going to speak is that everyone who is not speaking actually has your microphone off, and I see a lot of you do, so that's great. Now, at the beginning of the meeting, the 4 or 5 of us who first started the meeting, microphones were on, and there wasn't any distortion in the speech or in the audio. So maybe it's not such a big issue anymore. Maybe something that Zoom has done to ensure that it's not an issue if mics are on or off. But anyway, let's play it by ear and see how it goes. And if there is some kind of distortion in the audio, then I'll ask everybody to turn their mics off if they're not speaking. Is everybody comfortable with Zoom? I just want to, because we are good. We're just moving from the WebEx platform to Zoom, and so let's keep this up for the time being, and hopefully move on. Okay, so let's turn to the agenda. I sent it out a couple of days ago, together with the documents we're going to be referencing and the minutes of the last meeting, and I'll get to those in a second. So roll call. Peter is taking notes for us as a function of being the vice chair, so thank you, Peter, for that. We have regrets from Gil, from John, and Howard. Hopefully we see them next month or the month after. I know that Howard is taking a couple of months off, so he'll be back to us in the new year. All right. Next thing to do is basically move to the agenda. So the adoption of the agenda. So can I have someone to move the adoption? Oh, okay. Sean, and a seconder. Anybody, just put your hand up. Okay, Stefan. All right, and all those in favor? Moved. Okay, so we accept the agenda as it stands, basically. And with respect to the minutes of June the 8th, I need somebody to move and second their approval. So can I have a mover? Okay, Sean again, seconder Hank, so thank you. All right, so that's where we are as far as the agenda and the minutes are concerned. Item number 4, the news and announcements. The first thing I want to do, and again, Howard's not here, but I would be remiss in not thanking Howard formally for his absolutely exceptional contribution to the PRC over the course of the last 6 years and change. That's the length of time I've actually been involved with the PRC as well. So Howard has always been the chair while I've participated, and as all of you already know, he did a great job. So our thanks to Howard formally, and I'll repeat that thank you when he returns to us in the new year. All right, his accomplishments are certainly, and his achievements are certainly something that Peter and I will strive to maintain for the purposes of the PRC. Okay, we have introduction of new members. We have 2 new members who are joining us. Firstly, we have Jamie Livingston. He is nominated by the Nova Scotia CGA. He's an associate professor of criminology at St. Mary's in Halifax. Just call on Jamie to just say a few words of introduction on his own behalf.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jamie. I'm as was mentioned, a criminologist in Halifax in Mi'kma'ki. I work in the areas of mental health, substance use, and the criminal justice system, and issues of social justice and inclusion within those intersections. And prior to being a professor, I worked in government for about 20 years in the health sector in British Columbia. So I'm really happy to be part of this group, and I look forward to our meetings together.
Thanks, Jamie. You in no way look old enough to have those credentials. I'm just saying that. Okay, we'll call on Brendan, who is, it looks his age for where he is at this point in his career. So I've circulated to everybody Brendan's CV. It's actually very, very impressive. So good for you, Brendan. And open it up to you to say a few words.
Well, thank you for those words. I appreciate the compliment. So I will try to keep it brief given we have a pretty lengthy agenda. But as Miles mentioned, my name is Brendan Johnson. I'm a doctoral student at the Université de Montréal in Quebec, though most of my experience is in Ontario. I'm currently writing my doctoral thesis, and it's mostly on criminal courts and how they've adapted to the pandemic. However, most of my knowledge is on court practices, sentencing issues of that nature. I've also done a lot of volunteer work for the Collaborative Justice Program, which is a registered charity in Ottawa. They provide restorative justice services for criminal cases. I was recently voted in as president of the Collaborative Justice Program, so that just started. I've also done a little bit of policy work with Cheryl Webster at the University of Ottawa and Anthony Dube. I've done a little bit of work for them. So I have a great deal of interest in public criminal justice policy, and I'm just hoping to contribute as much as I can to the CCJA as well as the PRC. So thank you for having me.
That's wonderful, Brendan. Thank you. I can note that we are going to return to Brendan a little later in the agenda. He's already prepared a brief. He worked with Howard on that we'll make a reference to a little bit later. So thank you. Okay, next item obviously is the election of the Liberal minority government on September the 20th. Ministers were appointed on October 26th, so just a few weeks ago. The two ministers that have the most relevance to the work of the PRC is, of course, David Lametti, who's the Minister of Justice and the Attorney General of Canada. So he's returned to the same role. I would think for our purposes, that's a good thing. All right, he's already familiar with who we are. We've already had interactions with Minister Lametti, and hopefully it won't be too long before he brings back on board the various justice bills that died in the order paper that we can start working on. So I think it's a good thing that Lametti is back in that place. The second minister, he's new to the position, is Marco Mendicino. He's now the Minister of Public Safety, who replaces Bill Blair with one exception, and that's the emergency preparedness. And I think I'll ask Peter to talk about that briefly. So Mendicino, he has ministerial experience, so that's a good thing as well. So he's not new out of the gate. We haven't had any contact with him that I'm aware of at the PRC, but we certainly will going forward. Peter, Bill Blair still has the hived off responsibility for emergency preparedness. Is that correct?
That's my understanding of it. So that the new minister will simply be public safety, which will take in RCMP, CSIS, Correction Services Canada, CBSA, and then the oversight boards or agencies that go along with it. I think it's actually going to be a very interesting change in Canada just because of the role of emergency measures, especially given climatic issues and things coming from that, the wildfires, et cetera, which very much have an impact on the federal piece as well. So it'd be interesting to see how it sorts out. I think the good part is that the current or the new Minister of Public Safety will actually have a much more focused framework to work in, and there's the two oversight agencies, the Committee of Parliamentarians and the Super Circ, as it's called, being able to assist to provide good oversight. So that's my thought on it.
No, thanks, Peter. I mean, obviously the distinction is important. It's really, really good to know that there was that division of duties. So Parliament resuming, I think it's November 22nd. It's a week from Monday or 2 weeks from yesterday. So we'll start to see the introduction of bills, obviously. One of the things that will be a relatively, will shorten our meeting today considerably is that, in fact, because it's a brand new Parliament, all the previous bills, a lot of them that we've been dealing with died in the order paper, so they have no currency, but some of them will be returning, obviously, and we'll be talking about those. So for parliamentary committee purposes, there's no work at this stage of the game, but there will be shortly. And we'll get to those committees in a few minutes. Other news or announcements. I know that Irving sent me an email about a half an hour ago with respect to an invitation to join a group discussion on Indigenous and racialized identities. And so we'll return to that as an item at the end of the agenda, just to have Irving say a few words about that. Does anyone else have any news or announcements for the good of the PRC? No, good. All right, guys, thank you. All right, business arising. So we don't have any updates on justice-related parliamentary committees at this point because they haven't met and they haven't been constituted to meet at this point, but they will be relatively shortly. Of the 4 committees, we have members who are prepared to follow these committees and report on a monthly basis to the PRC. The first one on the House of Commons, Justice and Human Rights. That's always been Howard's baby, but I'm going to be doing it until he comes back, and I'll continue doing it if he doesn't want to take it on again. But he's certainly welcome to, because he did a fabulous job in doing that. But in the meantime, I'll keep a watch on this committee and report to the PRC as the developments take place at the committee level. The House of Commons Public Safety and National Security Committee, Gil and Rob have agreed to continue doing that. So that's good news. The 2 Senate committees, the first one, Legal and Constitutional Affairs. This one is open to be assumed by a member of the PRC. So hopefully some of you may give it a thought, whether you want to, in fact, take on the work of following this committee and reporting back to us. If you don't, we'll have a stopgap measure put in place to make sure that the work is done. But I certainly welcome anybody to assume that role. Anybody want to volunteer now? Okay, give it some thought then.
Sorry, it is something that I'm interested in. It's one of the committees that I really enjoy reading. However, I'm a little worried that perhaps, given that, seeing as it deals with more legal affairs and not having a legal background myself, I wonder if that might be problematic. So I suppose what I'm saying is I'm interested in it, but if perhaps you think that maybe it would be better served with someone with a legal background, I would understand that.
Okay, well, don't dismiss it yet, Brendan. Sean?
I am working on getting a legal background, and I'd be happy to work with Brendan on that, as much as I haven't done that kind of reporting for this group yet. Happy to, if you're open to that.
Of course, yeah, that would be wonderful.
That's great. Let's slot you both into that then. Might as well take advantage of your generous offers. So Sean and Brendan will place you into that slot for the Senate Committee on Legal and Constitutional Affairs. So thank you very much. And the remaining Senate Committee on Human Rights, Francois is going to continue with that committee. So appreciate that. Francois, we have his regrets for today. He's in court. So if he can slip out at lunch sometime, he says he'll join us, and we'll see if that happens. All right, guys, the next issue is the status on the work of the subcommittee on racism. And this is taking a particularly interesting route going forward. So perhaps Irving, you can report on that.
Yeah, well, briefly, we discussed it at the board. There's a couple of options that are still out with the board directors to determine precisely what we do after the, I guess, saying goodbye to the subcommittee specifically, because the board has agreed that we should have a separate committee dealing either with calling it either social justice or systemic racism, or a combination of those two. So that's still out for vote, and I think we'll have a decision probably within the next week or so. But I can report definitely that we will have a separate committee dealing with the kinds of issues that were previously dealt with by the subcommittee.
Well, that's a, yeah.
Pardon me.
Anybody want to have any questions for Irving on that? Any comments?
I don't know, Peter, if you want to jump in as well, because you were on the call. You're on mute, though. Yeah.
Not anymore. Just briefly, I think, and it has been discussed, that there is plenty of room for both as separate committees, PRC and whatever the name of the new one will be, to work collaboratively together. And I think that is the key part here. It's for the CCJA is the umbrella. The two committees are under that umbrella. and anything going out obviously goes out from CCJA, not a specific committee. But there is plenty of room, and we've already demonstrated that in the past, where the two ideas can totally collaborate for the good of everyone. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. Thanks, Irving. Yeah, this is a really good idea. It makes all kinds of sense for all kinds of reasons. And clearly, as Peter is saying, what will happen, as far as I could tell, is when we put parliamentary briefs forward to the CCGA for their review and adoption, clearly this committee will take a look at them as well and make sure that there's appropriate references in the briefs generated at the PRC with social justice, and that's totally appropriate. So thank you for that, and we'll wait to see how it finalizes, but it's certainly going the right way. So that's good news. The next issue is the criminal cases review consultations. This is something I'll speak to because I'm involved in it. I'm participating as a consultant on behalf of the CCGA, and I also are doing it independently as a function of my publications in the field. So for those of you who aren't familiar with this, the last year, or I guess it was earlier this year, actually, the federal government created a consulting committee, basically formed of former Ontario Court of Appeal Justice Harry Laforme, classmate of mine, as it turns out, and as well Ontario Court of Appeal Justice Juanita Westmoreland Traore. And so they put this committee together. They hired Kent Roach to manage it. And those of you who don't know Kent Roach, he's an absolutely outstanding scholar, academic. He has the chair at the Faculty of Law at the U of T. They couldn't have picked a better person for this, truly. And what the whole purpose of the committee is to look at creating a Canadian Criminal Cases Review Commission. And the purpose of that is to replace applications to the federal government under section 696.1 of the Criminal Code, which is an extraordinary remedy essentially to exonerate the wrongly convicted. That's the nuts and bolts of it. So if you are wrongly convicted, and you don't have to be in prison, but most are, and you believe you have evidence of innocence, then you can apply currently to a working group at the Ministry of Justice to have it go through a process to eventually get a recommendation by the Minister of Justice to refer the case back to whatever court of appeal in whatever province the conviction took place. It's a relatively cumbersome process. One of the problems with it is that most academics, me being one of them, see the fact that the review process is still taking place within the Ministry of Justice, as opposed to an independent commission or committee, is seen as troublesome. And it's like cops watching cops kind of thing. It's the same kind of thing. It's everybody pretty much agrees that it should be an independent process. There are currently, the first commission of this kind was established in the UK, 1998, if my memory is correct, and it's heard thousands of applications in the United Kingdom for the wrongly convicted. It's seen as the gold standard, although it has a significant drawback in its operations, which is now being addressed in a Westminster report that was generated in that regard. Norway has one, and New Zealand recently put one into place, which is actually on its face, looks like it's going to be quite well done and useful. And so what the Canadian committee has done, first off, they had consultations. They not only basically talked to all the existing review commissions in place, but they had a really widespread consultation process across the country for those who have an interest in this particular field, and I was one of them. So at this stage of the game, the report is done, and it's ready to be forwarded to Mr. Lametti. It was to be done by the end of October, but they're crossing some T's and dotting some I's before they get it in, but it'll definitely go to the minister this month. That's one of the this is one of the reasons I was hoping for basically a Liberal election once more, to keep this initiative alive, because I'm not so sure it would have been alive under any other party. So turning it back to the Liberals again, with it already being on the radar, is obviously an important kind of thing. And again, because it's back to Lametti, who's the one who authorized its creation in the first place, is also a good thing. So we'll see what happens. We'll see if it's the minister accepts the recommendations that come forth. I haven't seen the recommendations yet, but they will be online shortly. So it's something that we'll keep an eye on, and I'll report to the PRC on a regular basis on how it's progressing through the approval process, and obviously what the final decision is by the ministry, and hopefully that means the actual creation of the commission. Anybody have any questions about that? Hopefully I explained it to you. Okay, we good?
I got a question for you.
Sure.
To jump in, that sounds like a really interesting project to me. I've looked at wrongful conviction and all that other kind of stuff, and I'm just curious. And did you guys touch on work by Bruce McFarlane?
Work by who?
Bruce McFarlane.
Oh, sure. Bruce was part of the consultations. Yeah, I know Bruce well. Bruce.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah. I'm the. For those you don't know, I'm the editor of the Wrongful Conviction Law Review, and Bruce is on my board. So we have academics, lawyers, judges from around the world on our board, and anybody who's anybody in the wrongful conviction field is on it for the most part. So yeah, Bruce was certainly involved.
Very cool. Yeah, he's from Manitoba.
Yeah, that's right.
I got to throw a shout out to the homies. Yeah, you know.
Exactly. Good stuff. All right, guys. Thanks for that, Sean. Okay, so let's turn to item 6, new business. So these are essentially the items that still remain alive after the dissolution of the 43rd Parliament. So these are things that didn't die in the order paper. So the first one deals with unmarked graves of children at residential schools. It was referenced in the CCGA newsletter of September the 12th, 2021. And I appended to you for your edification the CCGA statement in that regard, which is also a reflection on a statement by the Alberta Criminal Justice Association. So hopefully you had a chance to take a look at it. So this is really for information purposes. There's nothing really more for us to do in this regard, other than just to bring it to your attention that this is what the CCGA has done on this particular issue. Any comments, questions? Okay. Secondly, CSC's consultation on structured intervention units. There was a meeting that took place June 2021, so it's 5 months ago now. A fairly extensive meeting. Oh, Irving, shaking it.
No, I'm saying nothing new again.
Oh yeah, exactly. I'm going to get there. So for those of you who aren't familiar with this issue, and again, this is where Howard's institutional memory is invaluable. So I rely upon Irving to a great degree to help me fill in these gaps. But SIUs are a creation of Correctional Services Canada to replace what was euphemistically referred to as solitary confinement in the federal correctional system. Provinces and territories have exactly the same problem with solitary confinement, although my experience that's where my experience is in provincial corrections is that they were incredibly abused at the provincial level because in provincial jails solitary was often used as it was a scheduling issue, as in if there wasn't enough correctional officers or guards that showed up that day, so everybody went into solitary, and so it was it's a difficult issue. Anyway, it's a waiting brief for us. We're waiting to hear back from the CSC on those consultations and see what they have to recommend, and I'll certainly call upon Irving when that happens. So we'll keep an eye on it. Any questions or comments, particularly I guess to Irving? Nothing new. Okay, thank you. Okay, and likewise, is Andrea here? Did I see Andrea? Yeah, the next issue is confinement. Again, the same kind of thing was happening in the Yukon, and I've appended for you the legislation that deals with this issue in the Yukon. Andrea tells me that it likewise is an issue that's not going anywhere quickly. As a matter of fact, she doesn't think there's anything further for the PRC to do other than she'll report to us if we ask her to on the issue. All right, so perhaps sometime if anything warrants it, we'll have Andrea give us a quick talk. She'll come and join us for this purpose. But I've just put it together with the CSC consultations, both of them dealing with solitary and structured intervention units. So that's nothing more to add there. Yes.
Well, sorry, it's Andrea. I'm on the
Oh, well,
phone.
there you are, Andrew. I'm sorry. Yeah, you are there. Good, thank you.
I am here. Just quick. So just so people have an idea of what's going on here, in the CSE meeting and me finding out about what was going on. So what I'm actually looking at doing, and I just have to find some time to do it, is looking at putting together a paper for the justice report, because in fact what UConn just did is completely opposite to what CSE has done. And in my opinion, UConn is actually leading the way in Canada on segregation reform. And so we've started that with new legislation, which was proclaimed over a year ago now. And so we've taken a completely different approach than CSE, and I think is that we are actually leading the way when it comes to segregation or solitary confinement reform. And so I want to put something on paper, because while I was the director of corrections for the territory, just recently have moved on from that position. There are a lot of great things that we've done around reform related to segregation or solitary confinement, and I need to get that out into the public realm. So that's kind of where this one came about, because after I heard from Howard about how the meeting went, I sat down and went, hold on, did anyone talk about what's going on in the Yukon, which is radically different from what's happening in other provinces and territories or within the federal system?
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you. And certainly, if you're going to publish a paper in the Justice Report, we'll all certainly read it, and it'll be there for comparative purposes, going forward as to what the CSC does and what have you. So that's great. Thank you, Andrea. Sorry, I didn't see you at the outset. Appreciate that. Any comments on what Andrea had to say? Okay, thank you. All right, next item. We're going back to Brendan. I always refer to Brendan because my son's name is Brendan, so it's easy to remember you. So he's prepared a draft brief, basically on rural crime. And rural crime is a very new topic for consideration by virtually any criminal justice group. So it's really interesting that it's a good thing that we're bringing this onto our agenda. So Brendan's prepared a draft brief. I understand now he's going to speak to it at our next meeting. I think Brendan's going to do some more work with it with Howard. He wants to. He told us that the other day, Peter and I. So that's great. And I've also provided the opposition paper by the proposed Alberta Provincial Police. And Peter provided that, so thank you, Peter. And again, we'll refer to that as well in conjunction with Brendan's report next month. So hopefully everybody gets a chance to read this material. And whatever report is updated by Brendan, I'll obviously circulate to the PRC as well. So that's a wait for one more meeting. All right, so thank you for that. Okay, next item, engagement on Statistic Canada's police reported Indigenous and racialized identity statistics. So I guess it's actually in the agenda for Irving. This is what you received the email about the meeting?
Well, yeah, I guess, I assume Kyle is not on the call, right?
No, he's not.
Okay, somebody from the phone, on the phone, I don't know who it is. Kyle did most of the work actually responding to their survey back, probably it was in September, I think. And then Howard added some material, and then I did as well. I sent it off to Stats Canada. We haven't heard anything since, except just this morning, as you alluded to before, at 11:33, I got an email saying that they're inviting us to attend a Zoom meeting, or actually a series of Zoom meetings. I don't know if they're all the same or they're 1, 2, 3 kinds of events, and they'll go into greater detail as it progresses. So I really have no idea what they've done at Stats Canada, except they've obviously, hopefully they've assimilated a great deal of information. There was a kind of a complicated survey to carry out, actually. It was a lot of detail they were asking for. And again, hats off to Kyle, who did most of the work trying to respond to it. I'll attend the sessions. I have to look at my calendar, just open another email. I think it starts in a couple of weeks, and like I said, it's going to be there's supposed to be 3 sessions where it'll be kind of a conversation. But again, unless they tell us where they're at in terms of analyzing all the input that they received, I don't know where it's going, quite frankly. And And, now they're also asking for another one on correctional issues and so forth. So I'll be in a position to report something much more significant, I hope, or more useful next time we meet after we have this series of Zoom meetings with Stats Canada. And as I suggested to you very quickly, like 3/4 of an hour ago, if there are members of PRC who would like to participate, I'd be more than pleased, or you can, Miles, share the email and they can register to be participants in the Zoom sessions.
Sure, actually, that's a good idea. So I'll send that out.
Okay,
Email link for the meeting.
right.
Good stuff. Any comments or questions for Irving? All right, guys. Okay, next issue is John Howard. It's an issue dealing with the National Associations Active in Criminal Justice, of which the CCGA is a member. And it's Bill C-228. It requires the Minister of Public Safety to produce a national framework to reduce recidivism. This actually didn't die in the order paper. This actually is a live issue. And at this stage of the game, there's an obligation on the federal government to implement a framework. Obviously, they haven't done that at this point. Irving is on the committee, on the CCGA committee with the NAACJ. So Irving, do you want to add 2 cents to that?
Well, there are meetings taking place again via, I think it's Microsoft Team or whatever, but it's a Zoom type session every couple of weeks. And John, they're trying to basically gather together various research reports that demonstrate what works in terms of reducing recidivism, etc. But as it happens, I got an email yesterday from Public Safety, and they too are doing a consultation. I think there's going to be 2 sessions. I'm going to go by memory. I think it's November 16th, November 23rd, as focus groups or whatever. So I'm imagining that there's going to be a relationship with the work that John Howard has been doing via NAACJ, but there may be all kinds of other members on the call, and we'll see where that goes. Again, led by Public Safety, on behalf of the Ministry of Public Safety, obviously.
All right. Well, thank you. Again, we'll call on you next month.
Yeah. We'll see where it goes.
Thank God for Irving. All right. That's super. Appreciate that. Any comments or questions on that? Oh, yeah, Sean.
Yeah, just one comment. Not sure if it's something that's going to come up, but I did see in the news, I think this morning. I heard that in British Columbia, there's a lot of talk about our push for decriminalization of possession. So I'm not sure if that will come up in the conversation, but just thought I'd bring it up.
Yeah, there is a push. There's a push for all drugs to be decriminalized.
Yeah, that's what I heard anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Brendan, you put your hand up, or?
Yeah, sorry, just really quick. Was that the Bill C-228, was that something that was sent out by email?
It would. That's a good question. I'd have to look at our prior agendas and minutes. I don't have, actually, Howard's still putting those together for me, so I don't have a record of them. I mean, it would be available on the legislative info site.
Yeah.
Okay.
So pretty easy to look up.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. All right, guys. So that's the last of the new business. So our last item is item 7, and this is just a recitation of the bills that in fact died on the order paper, and there's a couple of them that we're pretty confident are going to be coming back on the agenda the Ministry of Justice's agenda pretty quickly. First one, Bill C-31, an act to amend the Criminal Records Act and make consequential amendments. This is a bill that this is the 3rd or 4th iteration of a bill. I've been following this for the PRC. This is a bill to basically streamline the record suspension process, and the latest announcement from the Liberal government in the last Parliament was that they were returning to a pardon process, which is what was removed from the availability to those with records back in 2010 and 2012 by Harper. And so they're returning to a pardon system. They're removing the fee. The fee went from $50 to like $631 or something. It was atrocious. And it's also supposed, you would all know that, there was allegedly a system put in place by the federal government last year, the year before, to streamline pardons or record suspensions for simple possession of pot. And they put that in place, and it's been a failure to a great degree. I mean, there's about 10,000 Canadians with records of simple possession of pot, and just a fraction, a very small fraction of those actually were granted. That people actually went to the trouble of applying for it, because it's still a cumbersome process to apply. You have to, for the last 10 years or whatever the period of time is now, you have to go back to every place you lived and get records from all those places you lived, and get your RCMP reports with fingerprints. It's cumbersome. And so, only the dedicated, would actually take that on. Even if it was a no cost application fee, there's still cost to getting your criminal record background check and what have you. So, hopefully, the new legislation, when it returns back before Parliament, is going to be, better structured. The last iteration is certainly an improvement over previous ones, dealing with record suspensions. So again, returning to a pardon is a good thing. Our position, the position that I put forward in the brief that I prepared, was in line with what Senator Kim Pate had recommended, which was a expungement system dealing with spent convictions. So the UK and Australia, New Zealand have what are called spent conviction regimes, which simply means that depending upon the severity of your conviction, whether it's indictable or summary conviction, and with respect to the topic, convictions for sexual assaults, particularly on minors, is a whole different ballgame. Nobody's getting a pass out of that kind of conviction for the most part. But spent conviction simply means, as a function of the passage of time, if you haven't had any further involvements with the law, essentially from the date of the completion of your sentence. In the UK, it depends on what it is. It's either 4 years or 10 years. The conviction is just removed automatically from your record, right? So it's spent, over the passage of time, and that's been a very effective way to do it. And California, which also had the same kind of thing that we have with respect to record pardons for pot possession, when it had initially, just as we do now, have an application process, it had very few applicants, just like we do. It went to a spent conviction regime, and tens of thousands took advantage of it, or were automatically given advantage of it. So anyway, I will keep this brief, and I will report back to us, back to PRC, when it's reintroduced again, and what will be now the 5th iteration of what's being proposed. I'm sure Kim Pate will be on top of it as well with her own version. If she's not, simply, and she was quite pleased with the last version with the kind of caveats that I just described. So that's now dead on the order paper, but hopefully to be reintroduced. The hate speech bill C-36, it died in the order paper. So that's something we'll watch to see a reintroduction, I would presume. Proposed legislation on the regulation of the internet, which was also proposed, died, and we'll see what happens to that with the reintroduction in Parliament. And lastly, the legislation dealing with mandatory minimum penalties, which is the bane for I can guarantee you, for Sean, who's a criminologist. Mandatory minimums is something that every criminologist and anybody concerned with criminal justice sees as an exceptionally detrimental part of the criminal justice sentencing process, right? And so the idea is to see legislation that puts some discretion back into the hands of sentencing judges, right? Even if the mandatory minimums are in place, if there's at least some provision that allows that minimum to be avoided with the appropriate discretion by the judge, the sentencing judge, then that's certainly an improvement. So we're waiting to see whether that's going to come back or not. We presume it is. It's an important bill. Any comments or questions about any of those I just ran through?
Got one more comment. Sorry to keep throwing them in.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I had an opportunity this spring to look at Bill C-11, which may be of interest to the group. I can mention it in a moment. But something that I noticed in that is that the government and governments in the Commonwealth, they seem very interested in moving towards a presumed consent model, or using these presumed assumptions to be able to let the system do what it needs to do, like with the criminal records, doing that automatic Wow, sorry, I guess I had too much coffee this morning. Being able to flip it appropriately, automatically. So I guess like there's a lot of appetite for that. So I'm hoping that that comes through.
Yeah,
So
thank you. Yeah, and Jamie's a criminologist as well. So I mean, Jamie would be all over mandatory minimums, or at least when I was a criminologist once upon a time. Yeah, absolutely. So good stuff. All right, guys. So that's it. And it's 12:46. So that's great. My goal is, and I mentioned this to Irving a little earlier, my goal is to keep the meetings as much as possible within the hour time frame, because after an hour, some of you are going to have to return to work or go on to your day doing whatever else you're going to be doing. And you could tell in previous meetings, after an hour, people will be dropping off the call in any event. So I'm going to do my darndest to make sure that we get everything in an hour. So if sometimes I appear curt in that I'm going to call discussions to a halt, it's not because I don't want to hear what you're saying. It's just that I want to make sure that we get to everything within a reasonable time frame, so that everybody has an opportunity to participate and be up to date on what we're doing, and don't have to leave a call and wonder what happened once you're gone. So there we go. Any questions or comments at all? If there's any other, if there's some other way you want me to conduct these meetings, I'm absolutely open to suggestions. This is basically a new start for the PRC with Peter and I at the helm. So whatever we can do, we'll certainly do. And any suggestions, please let us know, and we'll take care and we'll adopt them. Anything else? Any comments or concerns?
Can I just get the, who is Lynn's iPad and who's the phone number? Anyone?
Hi, my name is Lynn Smith. It's been way too long since I've been attending the PRC committee meeting. I will share my information after the call, because I understand that we're low on time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Lynn, for joining us. Much appreciated. So somebody has a 506 area code, looks like.
That's Rob McGregor.
Oh, Rob. Okay, well,
Hey,
good.
Rob.
There you go. That's easy enough. All right.
I thought it was CSIS listening in, Rob.
Whoa, same
Same thing.
umbrella organizer.
Good
Okay.
to hear you.
All right, so thank you. So I'll end this, and again, the recording obviously will be, I'll archive it, and it's available for anyone to access by just making the request, and I'll take care of that. Thank you very much. Our next meeting is Tuesday, December the 14th at the same time. Anything you want to add for next month's agenda, please let me know or Peter know, and we'll make sure it's taken care of.
Super.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Miles. Take
good to see
care.
everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.